Hello class, my name is Michelle DeAngelis, and today I'm going to try to persuade you to be in favor of increasing the federal minimum wage. Did you know that the current federal minimum wage is only $7.25 an hour, and that half the people on minimum wage actually fall below the poverty line? My name is Michelle, and today we're going to talk about the current federal minimum wage. This relates to so many people because millions of Americans today work minimum wage jobs. This current minimum wage promotes a higher poverty rate within our society and actually increases the wage disparity between rich and poor in America. To speak to my credibility during this presentation, my sources come from books, editorials, newspaper websites, and scholarly journals. So we're going to talk about four main points in this presentation. The first thing we're going to talk about is the problems associated with the current federal minimum wage. The second thing we're going to talk about is a solution that I've devised that could fix this problem, which would be redistributing our tax dollars. The third thing we're going to talk about today is a visualization of what society could look like with this implementation of solution and what it currently looks like without. And the last thing we're going to talk about, the fourth thing we're going to talk about today, is action that you yourself can take to fix this problem. So let's start by talking about problems associated with the current federal minimum wage. The minimum wage today is obviously too low, so low that it makes it hard for people working minimum wage jobs to buy necessities like food and clothing. The lower the minimum wage, like I said before, the higher the poverty rate. This is a direct cause of the wage disparity between rich and poor in our society. So those people on minimum wage typically work more than one job. I myself have a minimum wage job and I work 3 jobs. Sometimes these people have to work 80 plus hours a week with no overtime and no benefits, and many of the people are on food stamps. And this information comes from Call 2013 and Mish et al. 2012. So the extent of the problem. The cost of rent in our country in the last 10 years has increased over 100%. During coronavirus, people were making more money off of unemployment than they did in their minimum wage jobs. And I think that says a lot about how underpaid minimum wage workers are. And this information comes from Smith and Vavricek, 1987, and Schweitzer, 2020. So now let's talk about the solution I've come up with for this problem. So the solution I devised was to redirect our tax dollars, and we could do so by putting the money we pay in taxes from the military and police and convert it over into insurance benefits and minimum wage increase. So this would mean that our country has a flexible federal minimum wage according to the conditions of living within our country and state that you live in. This would ultimately redistribute government funds, like I said, from military and police and into an increase of the federal minimum wage. And this information comes from Mitchell et al. 2012 and Call 2013. So this solution relates to the problem because it's hard for underprivileged people to rise up in our current society. This would help people with a disadvantage by giving them true equal opportunity, which is what our country is based off of in the first place. Increasing our minimum wage would help these underprivileged people, and it would help stimulate the economy more. The more money people get, the more money they put out into the economy, which would help economic growth. And this information comes from Mitchell et al. 2012 and Smith and Vavricek 1987. So I think a lot of people, when you say you want to increase the federal minimum wage, they think that this encourages laziness. It doesn't, because a lot of these minimum wage jobs are actually considered essential, as we saw with the coronavirus. A higher minimum wage would give these people more respect in society, which would ultimately help them support their families more. So what would our country look like with this solution and without it? So our country is currently without it. With this solution, less people would be on unemployment and food stamps. Less people would have to work 80 hours a week, and people would have more money to go out, which means economic growth. This would create social change and ultimately decrease the wage disparity between rich and poor in our country. Like I said, this country is currently without this solution. So the health and wellness of people is not prioritized. People struggle to buy the necessities, like I said before, and rising in the ranks is pretty difficult and almost impossible. So to take action, we can use social activism and political activism. We can do this by following 4 steps. 1, we can vote. 2, we can sign petitions or start petitions. 3, we can protest, and 4, we can donate. So we can facilitate activism. The first thing I think is the most important in facilitating activism is voting Trump out of office. Biden encourages this increase in minimum wage, and so voting for a candidate that would facilitate it would definitely benefit the cause. You can sign petitions like change.org or signandmove.org, or you can donate to organizations like GoFundMe, the National Employment Law Project, or Just Economics. So to conclude, we talked about how the minimum wage is too low in our society. A solution I devised was to redirect our tax dollars. This would ultimately increase economic growth within our country, and political and social activism is action that you can take to fix the problem. I want to leave off on the fact that the American dream cannot exist under this economic ideals. Increasing the federal minimum wage would ultimately create equal opportunity for all, which is the basis of our current society, which the backbone of which our society was built on. And here are my references. Thank you.